Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. So today I am bringing you a video that is sponsored by my channel members. Yes, I'm remembering to mention it in the video this time. The last 2 months I've forgotten and had to put it in the description, and I always feel so bad that I do this. But if you don't know, one of the perks for the Romantic Renegades and above for my channel is to help pick a video topic once a month. And for this one, I even actually asked my channel members as a whole, like, what videos they were interested in. I might have asked my patrons too. I asked everybody. There always comes this point like mid-May where I've made the beginning of the month videos and I know what the end of the month videos will be, but I'm not sure what to make in the middle. This happens when you make 4 videos a week, surprisingly, that, you know, you need some help from your friends for video ideas. And by the way, I do have a form in my description that's request a video. If you put a if you put a bookshelf tour, it's not happening, but pretty much any other video you can request. And if it's something that I have enough recommendations for, or I feel inspired to do, or I haven't just filmed it, I'm happy to do that. So check that out down below. You can suggest a video, you can suggest a book down there as well. So this one was voted on by my channel members to be their sponsor video for the month. And this is a video that I may have made this one before, but I know I've made the opposite before. I know I've made books I thought I'd love, but I didn't. And this one is books I didn't think I'd like, but I did. Now, there are only a few of these where I was absolutely like, there's no way I'm gonna like it. But I'm a pretty open-minded person, and if I'm willing to try the book, I'm hoping that I love it. So this one, you know, you'll be able to tell by them like which ones I have a really like passionate response to and which ones I was just like, I don't know if that will be for me. And that's why it's like books I didn't think I'd like, but I loved. And it's not like books I was sure I would hate them and I love them, because I generally, there's very few that I feel that about. And usually if they're books I really think I'll hate, like I don't try them, if that makes sense. So these ones are ones that always had kind of a good chance anyway. But maybe I was nervous to try them because of hype or because of whatever. So that's enough of an intro. Let's get into it. And we're going to start with the one that I think is, you know, I know that it's like raging through Instagram and BookTube and romance BookTube right now. And I'm seeing people either be really just so not into it or people who are obsessed with it. And I'm obsessed with it. And that is Fourth Wing. I just talked about this in my weekly wrap up last week, that I did not think that I was even going to read this book because I know that it had been on some of my friends' anticipated releases, but it wasn't on my radar at all. And then release day came and everyone was posting and I was like, oh, there's an audiobook today. And I started it and I basically listened to it all in one sitting and I was obsessed. So yeah, this one has like, it's Dragon Riders, it's a slow burn, enemies to lovers. It is written very young. Like, let's just be honest, so we don't set people up for, you know, so we don't set people up for failure. Because I think that my absolute love of this was completely by having no expectation. And I almost like feel bad for some people who are going to be reading it and now having these sky high expectations, because I know what that's like. And I fully believe that me having such a strong reaction and just being over the moon for this book, like really, I had the best time, was based on me having no idea what I was getting into. I had not even read the description of the book. I just saw dragons and I heard it was slow burn and there was like an academic setting, and I thankfully actually didn't hear that it was like Zodiac Academy mixed with other things, because I didn't even make it through Zodiac Academy. So that type of comparison I think was like the wrong type of comparison for Jen, because it just wouldn't have been great. But anyway, I started it. I loved it. I really loved the heroine Violet. I loved the hero that we fall for, and I loved the dragons. And I won't be going in depth about all of these books because they're all books that I've gushed about before. I'm just pointing them out to this. So no spoilers for this one or more details than that. But again, it does read very young. I think a lot of people will find it immature in some aspects, but I listened to the audio and it hit all the right places for me. I really, really liked it, and I'm dying for Iron Flame. I can't wait for more. Loved it. Then there is Mile High by Liz Tom Ford, and this was one that was picked by my patrons, but there's backstory for all of these, of course, because there's reasons why they're hyped. So I've been seeing The Right Move and Mile High go around all over, and The Right Move was really the one that specifically my friends were just dying over. They were like, oh my God, this one. But Mile High, which this one wasn't picked for Patreon. The Right Move was picked for Patreon. But for the Romance Takeover Readathon, I decided to read Mile High first because I like to read things in order. And I was like, I have to read The Right Move for Patreon, so let's read the Mile High. So it's not so much that I expected to dislike this, because a lot of people were still giving this one 5 stars. A lot of people were still loving Xander's and Stevie. But I was just kind of like, whatever, I'll get to it, meh, because I need to read The Right Move. And I ended up enjoying this one so much as well. This one, I believe, this one is the hockey one. This one is a hockey player and a flight attendant. So she's a private flight attendant for this sports team. And Xander's is one of the players, and he has a bad boy reputation that is somewhat cultivated, but he sets his eyes on Stevie. And a big part of it is she's a challenge to him, but he also falls for her pretty quickly, and he is dedicated to getting this woman. So I ended up being completely charmed by this one as well. And I'm really glad that I read this one first, because I think if I had jumped to The Right Move the way a lot of people did and then went back to the Mile High, I maybe wouldn't have liked this one as much. But as it stands, this was a 5-star and The Right Move was a 6-star book. So we good with it. All right, now we're going to throw back. I kind of have these in like out of order of when I read them. They're all over. So this one now, it's been 3 years since I've read it. But one that I was super intimidated to read, and I was really nervous because I hadn't had super great experience with older romances. This one does fit the category of like old school, but it doesn't fit like Bodice Ripper old school. It's a classic at this point, okay? It's Dreaming of You. Yes, I don't have the prettiest cover, but I do actually like this one. I do actually like the red gold foil on this one, but it is one I'm still missing. I would love to have the original Dreaming of You at some point. I have a 14th printing, so you can tell how popular this book was for a historical romance from the 90s to have 14 printings, right? So anyway, this book, I'd heard all about Craven. I had been listening to the Fated Mates podcast, which like Derek Craven and Cressley Cole are like the reasons that podcast exists. And I was nervous to read it. I had read the up to current with the Robinell series, and I had been reading some of her other like family interconnected books, but I was scared to read some of her backlist titles, and I ended up loving this just the way everyone does. I actually have a dedicated vlog for this, which maybe I'll tag it up in the cards. Maybe. It is a very old, very crude vlog from way back when, so maybe I'll tag it. I'll take a look at it, but otherwise you could look it up if you want. The Book Refuge reads Dreaming of You if you want. But I did a dedicated vlog to it because I knew that if I loved it, I would love it. And if I didn't love it, then I would maybe have an unpopular opinion, and I thought I would share that as well. And I really loved it. It worked for me in so many subtle ways, as well as all the ways that it works for everyone. I mean, Derek is grumpy and closed off, and he has lived through a lot of stuff. And Sarah is just so smart and dedicated to her job as a writer and to putting truth into her fiction novels and bucking against convention. But it's done in a way that Lisa Kleypas does, where like there's a feminism to it without it punching you in the face. But it's still there, and it's still making a point. And I love how she does it. I really do. I love how she does it, and I appreciate it so much. And it's why she's a favorite author of mine, and why I think this is a classic for a reason and deserves to be. And this book is literally 31 years old now. Or 29 years old. I'm sorry, look at me. Look at me. It'll be 30 years old next year. That is nuts. It's still amazing. We'll do, oh shoot. Where did I put that one? I know I grabbed it. Here it is. I'm filming a couple videos today and I had this book in both stacks. So another one, and again, this wasn't one that I was like, I hadn't even really heard about this one before, but I got asked to be a part of a book club with my friends. Literally, is it Ravished by Romance? Is that who asked me? I think it's the other one. Oh, Historical Hellions. I'm so sorry. All the book clubs that's going on, I forgot. They asked me to be a part of their book club about like 2 weeks before or so. And I had never heard of this book before. I knew who the author was, but I didn't know about this book, except I owned it because I bought it for the step back. And so this is Whisper of Roses by Teresa Medeiros. And up to this point, the only other Teresa Medeiros I'd read was one of her vampire ones. And I wasn't super impressed with that, but I owned a bunch of her books because some of them are paranormal, some of them are Scottish, some of them just have beautiful step backs. And so as a collector of beautiful things, I owned a bunch of these. So that's kind of where it came from this. This was one that it didn't have an audiobook, which automatically like gives me like a tougher row to hoe with a book when I can't do the audio for a historical. It's just tough for me. It just is. It's become that way. I wish I could pay better attention. But this book sucked me in right away, and I was so happy I was asked to be a part of it because there was just some amazing like things in this book. There were so many great lines in this. And I loved how much her family loved her, but they needed to make an alliance to like stop war. And so she gets put in this marriage, and there's a lot of tumultuous moments in the beginning. And then there's literally like 3 acts to this book. And that's how Teresa Medeiros sets it up. She has even like parts 1 and 2 and 3. And they definitely fully are like different acts, right? Like she has like that, and she does this in a lot of her books. But then there's like a 3rd act where they're now like their marriage is now like separated for a while. And I was like, what are we doing in this end? Like what's happened? I was riveted. Okay, that's a horrible explanation of this book, but it is a daring warrior and a defiant beauty, and they get put in an arranged marriage to stop war between their families. War almost still happens anyway. And then they're starting to fall for each other, and then catastrophe tears them apart. And then it's like, do we even try? Because we never really wanted to be together anyway. Do we even try? And I loved the journey that they went on. It was so good. And it made me then read another Teresa Medeiros and another one. And I still have so many to choose from, but she is an old school romance author that I'm willing to sit down and physically read the books, where with a lot of them, I have so many on my shelves, but if they don't have an audiobook, I don't know that I'll take the time to get them. They'll probably just be pretty books on my shelves. So, all right. And then we have one more historical. We're just going through these. This one was also when I was asked to be a part of the Historical Hellions, the very first time that I was asked. So that's awesome. And I was asked to read one of the older historical romances in existence. Thankfully, it wasn't The Flame and the Flower, but it was Shanna, which I believe is Kathleen Woodiwitz's second book, or it's in the first 5 books. I know that for sure. I have 3 different copies of this book, and this one's my favorite. This is the one that I read and annotated when we did it. And I know that this one will get mixed feelings because it being so old, like honestly, this was written in 1977, which that's the same year that it was published. Like that's the first year that historical romance was its thing, right? Because that's the same year that The Flame and the Flower came out, and this one came out, I think, later. And it's just fascinating to me. So, me saying that, there aren't a lot of the staple things to swoon over, right? So, when I was reading this, I started reading it as like a dark romance, which is kind of how I have to look at some bodice rippers or old school romances, because of the way heroines are treated sometimes, because of the actions, because of the subjects. You know, like this takes place in I think we're in the Caribbean. man, it's been a while since I've read this one, so there's that too. But this is one that there actually have been some books that have like replicated this story a little bit. But the heroine is told she needs to get married. She has a very loving father, by the way, but he's like, you need to get married, someone to protect you. You can't just be wild and run around all the time. Like, you need a husband. And he says that with love. And so she ends up marrying a man who's condemned to die. And she promises him she'll give him like one night with her before he's about to be killed. But that doesn't actually happen. She marries him and then leaves, and he's supposed to die. Well, shocker, he doesn't. And now he has a wife and he plans to claim her. So he goes after her. But quite a few things happen. Obviously, this one is a chunker. This is a pretty big book. And again, I'm very vaguely explaining stuff. But what I loved about this book, because there are a lot of things that are hard to read in it, but Shanna is a brat. Like, she's a brat. And in some ways, the fun, kinky ways, but not really, because that's not what this book is happening. You can see it if you squint really hard that it's there. But she goes on a journey. This book takes place over time. She is a spoiled brat. She is willing to just kind of use people to get what she wants. But again, she does have a good father who's tried to teach her well. But he has spoiled her because she doesn't have a mother, so he has spoiled her. And then we have Ruark, who is, you know, her husband, who is determined to teach her some lessons as well. And they're lessons she needs to learn. They are lessons she needs to learn. And some of them involve him spanking her when it's not appropriate. And some of them involve her, having to be taught lessons and like fighting against him. And sometimes Ruark can seem very heavy-handed, but he sees something in her that he wants. And he sees the potential in her. It's just a matter of like, will he give up trying to find it before she is willing to give it? And so there's this push and pull. That was a lot of explanation. I don't know. That's like my view on this. This one doesn't read the way others do, but I still swooned over Ruark really hard, because even when he is like disciplining her sometimes or trying to knock some sense into her sometimes, I really loved him, and I loved that he wouldn't give up on her. And when he, almost does, sometimes I'm like, Shanna, you better make this right. So this was one I ended up loving, even though it definitely gets mixed feelings, as a lot of old schools do when we're reading them as modern women. There are some things you have to whistle past, and then there's sometimes where the authors know the story that they're telling. They're not just putting things in there because they were part of the time. Like, they're putting things in there that they know are wrong and that they want us to see that it was wrong too. So that's what I'm saying. All right. Then I have a bit of like a genre as a whole, or a type of book as a whole. So it was November last year, I did a reading vlog where I tried 5 manga romances. I had seen my friend Paperback Princess, who's now Madison Fox. She's changed her channel name to be more of like lifestyle as well as books and everything. But she had made a lot of videos about this. She's not the only person, but she's one of the people I first watched do a spicy manga rec video. And so between her videos that I'd watched and then my own book recommender at my Barnes & Noble, who also loves manga, I found a few. And so I wanted to put in here like books I didn't think I'd like, because I didn't know if I'd like manga. And so 3 that I wanted to share, there is of course Yakuza Lover. This one is a college student and a mafia don in the Yakuza. I know quite a few people were willing to like read this during the Mafia Romance Readathon we just had, and I love it. It's a funny thing too, because I don't necessarily rate these books super high. Like, I'll show you some. I usually rate them 3.5 stars, because they're completely bonkers. It's insta-love all the way. It's sexy times right away. And sometimes the stories are hard to follow because I feel like the translation isn't always perfect for me as an English reader reading these. But I always smile when I'm reading them, and that's a huge indication for me. So I know if you check my Goodreads and you see what I rate these, you might be like, oh, these ain't that good. Like, I just go into a different mindset when I read manga, but because I still have a scale of how I recommend things, I can't just say like, oh, this is a 5-star book, you need to read it, because the story isn't always working. Like, the story's a bit whack, but they're so much fun. They're so entertaining. And I'm up to volume, I've read through volume 6. I kind of take my time. Like, when I need the serotonin boost from Oya and Yuri, I do. So, love Yakuza Lover. Another one that was recommended from my friend that I dived into was I'll Never Be Your Crown Princess. And this one I did give 5 stars because the setup for it was so cool. Like, one of the like fantasy romance tropes that happens in manga is like time travel, or else what's it called, reincarnation. And so this girl gets reincarnated as this like noble's daughter, and she's supposed to marry the crown prince. She doesn't want to do that, so she has to be a virgin to marry the crown prince. So she decides to go to this masked ball to lose her virginity so that she can't marry the crown prince, but she ends up losing her virginity to said crown prince, so now he can still have her and marry her. So there's that. And this one's crazy. Let me show you the one. There's one colored photo in this one too. Just like, look at that. It's gorgeous. So this one, when I did my reading vlog, this was my favorite one that I read. There's only 2 volumes out of it so far, but I can't wait for more. And then another one that I found later on, and I've really loved this one. And the 3rd volume of this comes out really soon. I can't wait. Is The Titan's Bride. This one is by ITKZ. And this one is an MM romance. It's also kind of a monster romance. It's definitely a size difference, like, and it involves like space travel, where not space travel, but like dimensional travel. There we go. So this one, there's a high school senior named Koichi, or Kochi. I'm so sorry, I'm bad with the names. And he finds himself in the world of the Titans, and there's Prince Caius who's claiming him as his bride, because there's a prophecy about he needs someone who's not from his world. But Caius has never even been with men before, let alone this ginormous dicked Titan who says that he's his bride and plans to make him his. And it's oddly sweet and very sexy. And they end up coming to an agreement that, like, he'll try to be his bride for a certain amount of time. And if it doesn't work, if he doesn't want to stay, then he'll send him back. So yeah, I really like The Titan's Bride. So those are just a few. And yeah, I didn't know if I'd like manga. I definitely had it recommended by quite a few viewers, and I'd watched videos on it, but I didn't think it would be for me. And I'm so glad that I tried it, because manga can just be so fun. And mostly I'm sticking with the romance side of it for now. However, I did read Full Metal Alchemist, the first like bind up volume, for like one of my first reads of the year, and that definitely is a series I want to continue, and I know so many people love it. But because that one isn't romance, like, it's taking me a little bit to get into it, but it's fascinating. So, while we're on the topic of ones that I just didn't think would be for me, which I know is this whole video, but ones that were like outside my realm of interest, we of course have to talk about Manacled, because this one has to come up, and I have to put it up there because that is so heavy it hurts my wrists. So Manacled also represents fan fiction as a whole for me. I was just not interested in trying it, and I feel so snobby saying it now, especially because like there are legit great published works that are basically fan fiction. There also are plenty of authors that we know of and don't know of who started with writing fan fiction and have written, you know, marvelous books over the years, right? But I first heard about this in December of 2021, and my friend Jo from Not So Average Jo had been hearing about this on TikTok, and she was like, Jen, oh my god, I'm like this far in and it is destroying me, like it's so good, oh my word. And I waited I think until she just had finished it, and I asked if it was a romance, because I'd seen all of the, you know, the art, both the stuff that was done and is like in this book, because if you don't know, this was illustrated by Avondale, who is an illustrator. And so throughout the story, of course I can't find one when I want to show you. I'm gonna find it. There is art that's in it. Oh yeah, here's the back of this. Joe put this together for me. And I wanted to make sure it was a romance and it wasn't gonna end in tragedy, because it seemed super dark. Because that's the thing when it's fan fiction and it's not definitely put in a genre. I was like, am I gonna read this and be totally broken? Well, yes, I was totally broken, but it does have an HEA. It's just a struggle to get there. So yeah, I read Manacled. I was obsessed with it, and it led me to read. I've read over 80 fanfic in the last like 18 months. Because of that, I have a whole beautiful stack of it down here that my friend Joe has bound for me. Not Joe, Mel. Joe bound this one for me as a gift. Mel has bound everything else that I have. She is just so kind. So I had to put this in here because I had no idea what to expect with it. Again, really the only fanfics I'd read had been ones that had been like stripped of any like recognizable like names and stuff and had been repackaged. And this was the first time I straight up was reading like, this is Draco and Hermione, and I was completely obsessed, as so many people are. And I love that Manacled just continues to have moments like, you know, there'll be a bunch of people talk about it, it'll like die down, and then it comes back up, and it dies down and comes up, and it's because it's amazing. Like, it's so fucking good. So we love it. Okay. Then I want to throw in Between Hello and Goodbye by Emma Scott. This isn't one that I gave like 6 stars or anything, but this book I read recently because a patron asked me to read it. So if you don't know, I have a Patreon that supports what I do here, because I do this full time. And a couple of the tiers, which are, I mean, sadly, they are sold out because I have a maximum capacity of being able to do this. I just physically can't annotate so many books. But one of the top tier on my Patreon is an annotated book every month, which is a lot of work. It is a lot of pressure to get through, but for the most part, they have been rereads. Like, people pick the books that I already love and they ask me to annotate them for them. And that has made it really doable because I'm usually getting to reread books that I absolutely love. But they can pick any book they want. I do, of course, have veto power. I can be like, give me some other choices. But I'd been wanting to read an Emma Scott, and this was one I'd heard great things about. I knew it was a standalone, and so I gave it a try. And it involves a vacation romance. This girl goes on vacation, well, not a girl, this woman goes on vacation to kind of like get her life in order. She's a bit of a party girl. She's not super reliable, and her work is kind of pushing her to either like fully commit or else move on. And so she decides to go on a vacation to Hawaii, and when she's there, she goes on a hike and she ends up getting hurt, and then a fireman / first responder rescues her, and he ends up checking in on her while she's hurt, and she's like, I should just go home. I'm gonna go home. She ends up never going home. Well, not never going home, but she ends up, you know, staying longer than she meant to and meeting him and his family and falling for them and stuff. There are some heavy triggers in this one, but I ended up having a really great time with it, and I definitely would read more Emma Scott. She does have that very like emotional storytelling that can be difficult to get through, but I was very glad my patron picked this one and that I gave it a go. All right, then we have some that fit in the category of weird and strange. Now, I could have put Ensnared in this as well, I just want to say that, but I didn't even like really overthink that book. I just had seen that Tiffany Roberts was doing a spider romance and I read it. So I decided to pick 2 different monster type romances to talk about as ones I didn't think I'd like. And the prime example, and this one I read as a viewer recommendation. I had just started, I think, my viewer recommendation form, and I saw this one recommended, and I saw the cover of it, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to read that book. I'm not going to read that book, okay? But when I first started the book rec form, I did do a random number generator to choose the books. I don't do that anymore just because I'm too much of a mood reader, and I have such a strict TBR every month to get through that I kind of just mood read through the book recommendations, but I always try to read 3 or 4 every month. But anyway, this one came up. Soul Eater came up, and I was like, fuck, I don't want to read this. But I also have a rule with viewer recommended books that I give them 50 pages. That's just it. And if I'm like kind of feeling it, then I give them a little bit more, and I continue them. And the reason being for that, I would rather like DNF when I'm not vibing with it than push myself through a book and rate it 1 or 2 stars. Because if you know anything about me, like I don't do that. Like I don't rate the books real low. I don't like to do that unless I'm pushed to finish a book, or I get so pissed at it that I'm like, I'm finishing this book so that I can bitch about it. Because I'd rather DNF it, and then I don't really talk badly about the books I DNF for the most part, because I just don't want to. It's bad juju. I don't like doing it. So I dived in, and I was like, okay, I'm going to give this one 50 pages. And by their first interactions in the cells down below, I knew I was hooked. And so, yeah, this one is a post-apocalyptic monster romance. All of these in this series are MM. And we have Danny, who is a reluctant soldier, like was really be a soldier or starve to death. And then we have Win, the Soul Eater, who comes to Earth every 3 years and seemingly massacres a ton of humans. And so the military is trying to capture him and study him and kill him to supposedly stop him from slaughtering people. There's obviously more to that than we know, but also when Win allows himself to be captured in the beginning, Danny is the only one that he'll talk to. So the military keeps making Danny go in and speak with him, and it becomes clear that Win is a little bit obsessed with Danny. And when this military base kind of like blows up and everything goes to shit, Win tells Danny he can travel with him. And so this then becomes a road trip romance. And their spicy times are great. I love Danny. The audiobook for the first 3 books in this series are out now, and I really, really love the narration in the first 2 are what I've listened to so far. So I highly recommend you give these a try. But like, I had no idea what to expect with this as a cover, because right, I do judge a book by the cover, and the cover of this, I was like, what is this? Even though this does represent Win very well, because like he wears a hood and he has horns and he has black tipped fingers, and it's a moment. Also along the lines of monsters that I wasn't sure I would like is Viper by Naomi Lucas. Now this is a really beautiful cover, which you can absolutely buy. Don't get like swindled into paying a lot of money for this one or anything. It's on Amazon. I'll have it linked down below so you can get it. All the covers of these have like the plain snake cover, and then they have these gorgeous covers which are just so beautiful. So yeah, this one is a snake alien, also called the Naga, and these human women are there with like this science group. I think they're a science group, actually, I don't remember. And their compound gets attacked by Naga, and they demand the women because they can like sense them, and they want the women, and some of the scaredy cat men there actually give over some of the women. And Viper, who his name is Varushka, he knows that this woman is his mate, and he goes about making her his mate and wants to take her to his nest and make her happy so she'll have his Viper babies, because there are no female Naga left. They have been like taken or killed off, and so they need to reproduce. So I had no idea what to expect with this. It was totally crazy and wacky, and one of the things that I did really like is I liked that this was like a full story. It wasn't just a smutty novella with crazy snake anatomy, although that definitely exists. There's definitely some crazy snake anatomy in here, but it just worked for me so well. And kind of the mysteries of like how the Naga became to be, that slowly starts to be revealed, and it's kind of fascinating. It's kind of fascinating. I love it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I have loved all the subsequent books from it so far. The 5th one just released. She only puts out 1 a year, but I kind of like that because you know, you're not like oversaturated with these Naga books. So I had no idea what to expect with this, and I really enjoyed myself with it. Yeah, I also loved how like dominating he was. I think that sometimes with alien romances, they're very, very like sweet and timid with them, which can be good, but I also like a kind of commanding one as well. And then the last book slash series that I wanted to share for this, and this one is going way back, and you guys might not even believe this when I'm going to say that I didn't think I would like this book, because I've made it almost my whole personality at this point. And that is Wolf Gone Wild by Juliet Cross. I have spoken about this series in so many hours of footage and in so many videos that I can't believe there was ever a time that I was unsure about this book. I mean, it really all just goes back to that this was by someone that I looked up to and respected, and I had been talking to her about mafia romance off and on, and I listened to Smart Women Read Romance, the podcast, and I was nervous to read this book because I didn't want to dislike a friend's book or someone that I knew, and so I very much put off reading it for quite a long time. And again, I was nervous for how I would feel about it. And then I finally bit the bullet and I grabbed it, and I just was immediately swept away by how sweet it was and just how great this couple was together and all the nerdy bits in it. And it just really won me over. It made me so happy. And I was so glad that I gave it a go. And at the time that I read it, only the first 2 books were out. But I was by then friends with Juliet, and I was lucky enough to read ARCs for all the subsequent books, and it's been just a crazy ride, and now all 6 books are out, and it is just one of the most beautiful series that I've ever read, and I'm so, so happy that I gave it a try, and that I didn't let my, anxiety over it get in the way, because I would have missed out on just the best world. Like, the Stay a Spell world is a comforting place for me. It's a beautiful place, and it just brings me so much joy, so I'm so glad that I gave it a go. So there you go. Thank you so much to my channel members for sponsoring this video this month. Definitely check out the link in my description, or the little box that says, the little button that says join, if you'd like to check out the benefits and see. I am completely fan funded for what and supporter funded for what I do here, so every bit helps. Tell me a book that you didn't think you'd like and that you ended up loving, or a book that you trusted my recommendation to read and you liked. Yeah, and I think I'll have linked ones where I thought I'd love them and I didn't. If I made that video, we'll see. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.